Our top stories this hour. Popular accommodation and wedding venue, the Little Desert Nature Lodge, is believed to have been destroyed as a 62,000 hectare blaze continues to burn out of control in Victoria's west. 2 emergency warnings remain in place for 2 separate blazes. Residents in the town of Dimboola are being told to shelter in place.
It travelled some 40 kilometres in one single afternoon, obviously, and then late yesterday evening impacting the town of Dimboola. There is still currently a take shelter and emergency warning in place for the township of Dimboola.
Long lines of Palestinians are making their way back into the devastated north of Gaza as they search for what's left of their homes. It comes in the first phase of the Gaza ceasefire deal between Hamas and Israel. And Israel has revealed that 8 hostages due to be released by Hamas in the coming weeks are dead. The deal agreed that 33 Israeli hostages would be released in return for about 1,900 Palestinian prisoners and detainees. There are worries over the global rise in far-right groups around the world. Think tank Global Directions says social media is fueling more nationalist discourse and can put people in an echo chamber of certain views. It comes as 16 neo-Nazis are due to face court today after marching through Adelaide on Australia Day, allegedly making White Australia chants and displaying a Nazi symbol. And just this morning, a member of the public yelled a Nazi slogan at one of our reporters during a Cross 2 News breakfast. The South Australian Premier says there has been a rise in political extremism.
The views that they hold, I just think, are utterly rejected by the overwhelming majority of the community on both the centre-left and the centre-right of politics, which is, of course, where mainstream Australians sit. But these people that were conducting these acts on the weekend, they're not welcome.
A trial to give Victorians ticketless public transport has been described as pointless and a gimmick. Unlike cities including Sydney, Melbourne commuters can't yet pay for trips with a phone or credit card. Industry experts have slammed the move to trial the technology on just 4 bus routes in the state's northeast. The government will not say when ticketless travel will be ready.
Thanks, Emma. Now, survivors of the Auschwitz Nazi concentration camp have warned the world not to ignore a global rise in anti-Semitism as they mark the 80th anniversary of the camp's liberation. Our correspondent Michelle Rimmer reports.
80 years since the Auschwitz Nazi concentration camp was liberated by Soviet troops, thousands have gathered outside its front entrance to remember the horrors inflicted inside. Among them, survivors and their families, as well as world leaders including King Charles, Australian Foreign Minister Penny Wong and European heads of state. For more than an hour, those who lived through the brutal concentration camp shared their stories of survival and loss.
On an icy, windy day, I stood and watched helplessly as little girls from the nearby barrack were marched away crying and shivering to the gas chamber. They were covered with rags, and some of them didn't even have any shoes and were walking barefoot in the snow.
Earlier, survivors and their families laid wreaths and candles at a wall inside the camp where prisoners were once executed by firing squads. Around 50 survivors returned for the anniversary event. Others weren't able to attend in person, including 97-year-old Australian Yvonne Engelman. She was 14 when her family was taken in cattle wagons to the concentration camp. She never saw her parents again.
The cruelty, the hatred, the hunger is something I shall never ever forget. But one thing the Germans have never ever succeeded to break my spirit.
Survivors who spoke in Krakow shared a similar wish that the world not only remember the atrocities of the past, but take heed of a rise in anti-Semitism globally and ensure that history is never repeated.
Michelle Rimmer reporting there. Well, long lines of Palestinians are making their way back into northern Gaza as they search for what's left of their homes. It comes in the first phase of the Gaza ceasefire deal between Hamas and Israel. Global Affairs editor John Lyons is in Jerusalem.
Israelis have been devastated by the news that 8 of the remaining 26 hostages to be released in this current phase are dead. Hamas has provided a list of the 26 remaining hostages to be transferred in this 6-week period and said that 8 of those are dead. Israel says that this fits with their own intelligence, and so they've essentially confirmed that. What happens now in the next stage is later this week, a civilian woman, Arbel Yehud, will be released as a hostage along with 2 others in exchange for Palestinian prisoners. And then next weekend, there'll be another 4 or 5, if not 6, more Israeli hostages released, again in exchange for more Palestinian prisoners. All of this has come as tens of thousands of people in Gaza are making their way north, back to their homes, or what used to be their homes. Many of them are just returning to rubble. Now that movement follows Hamas's release of Arbel Yehud. They were meant to be moving north earlier in the week, but when Hamas did not release Arbel Yehud as the Israelis were expecting, then Israel said there could be no movement by those Palestinians up north. In terms of Donald Trump and his suggestion that many of the people in Gaza should be displaced and relocated to Jordan or Egypt, this week Donald Trump's Mideast advisor Steve Witkoff will be visiting Gaza to see for himself. After that meeting, we expect that he will advise Donald Trump as to what he thinks the next stage in this conflict should be.